Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm Susan. I am the president of the Intrepid Museum, and on behalf of our Board of Trustees, it is an honor to welcome you to our annual Memorial Day ceremony. We extend a very special greeting to those military personnel and veterans who are here with us today. We salute you for your commitment to the security of our nation, and we salute you every If I may extend a thanks to the Navy Band Northeast for the pre-ceremony music, absolutely beautiful. I am honored to present to you our special guests on stage with me, and I do ask that you hold your applause until they are all introduced. Vice President of the Intrepid Former Crew Members Association, Joe Litauer. Command Chaplain of the USS New York, Chaplain Anthony Pelk. Vice Chairman of the Intrepid Museum, Mr. Mel Irmagut. Co-Chairman of the Intrepid Museum, Mr. Bruce Mosler. Vice Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Bill Moran. And ladies and gentlemen, the 109th Mayor of the City of New York, the Honorable Bill Deblasio. If you will also join me in welcoming Commissioner of the New York City Department of Veteran Services, Brigadier General Retired Lori Sutton. Commander, Carrier Strike Group 2, Rear Admiral Stephen Evans, U.S. Navy. Commander, Navy Region Mid-Atlantic, Rear Admiral Charles Rock. Commander, 1st District, Rear Admiral Andrew Tiongson, United States Coast Guard. British Naval Attaché to the United States, Commodore Andrew Betton, Royal Navy. A special welcome to our Intrepid Museum trustees here with us today, Dennis Bovin and Tom Higgins. And a very warm welcome to Lieutenant Jack McCain, U.S. Navy, son of the late Senator and Intrepid former crew member, John McCain III. I ask at this time that you please rise as our national colors are advanced and remain standing for the performance of our national anthem by the Navy Band Northeast and for the invocation by Chaplain Anthony Pelk. Advance the colors. And sir.
Let us pray. Our eternal God, as we enjoy the many blessings that come with living in America, we recognize that these freedoms were bought with the blood of America's military service members. Truly, as your word says, greater love has no one than this, that he laid down his life for his friends. Be the God of all comfort to every family member who lost a loved one in defense of our nation. Help us today to honor those who paid the ultimate sacrifice, and may this ceremony inspire us to such. Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated. On Memorial Day, we honor all those who made the ultimate sacrifice, protecting our nation and our freedom. We are so pleased and we feel so privileged that you have chosen, of all the places that you could be today, to choose and to honor and to remember right here, right next to this legendary aircraft carrier that we call Intrepid. Throughout Intrepid's history, more than 250 of its sailors gave their lives aboard this ship and in the skies above. Many of the brave men who served with those are here with us today. May I ask at this time that all our Intrepid former crew members please stand, be recognized. That hold this great ship together bear a direct connection to the lives of the men who served on board. We understand it is our responsibility to honor Intrepid's gloried past, and it is also the responsibility of all of us to remember all the servicemen and women who paid the ultimate price for us. Intrepid in its time of active duty was remarkable, engaged in World War II, the Cold War, Vietnam, and the space race. Now, as a museum, Intrepid has become a landmark institution in New York City, offering educational and programmatic learning opportunities to every population. We use personal experiences and this massive wonder of technology to educate and inspire our future generations and to launch those generations towards greater achievements in science, engineering, aviation, and service, the fields that have become integral to Intrepid's history and most critical to our nation. We offer STEM education programming that reaches 55,000 school children per year, the majority of whom are underserved. We provide sensory-sensitive programming for those with autism, cognitive disabilities, for those who are deaf and hard of hearing, blind and visually impaired, and for those with dementia. And we offer numerous opportunities to experience the museum free of charge in order to break down economic barriers. For our veterans and our military personnel, we are so proud to offer some very special programming, particularly for those who return with combat-related trauma and other stressors. Our military family programs, they provide a safe space, a supportive museum experience for returning service members and veterans from all conflicts, with the aim of building community and to ease the transition back home. Our Intrepid After Hours program, they offer exclusive access to explore the museum and its collection, and an opportunity for veterans to express their own military stories and experience everything together. And we offer vet video chats to facilitate social connections and stimulating conversations for veterans who cannot physically be here. The Intrepid Museum is accessible to all veterans, regardless of distance, finances, or abilities. Intrepid also serves as a platform to celebrate and commemorate important moments in history. Whether it's in times of conflict or in times of peace, these moments have shaped our past, and they provided a springboard for our future. This year marks one of those milestones. 50 years ago, on July 20, 1969, the lunar mission Apollo 11 landed the first 2 people on the moon. That moment of awe and astonishment, that giant leap for mankind, proved once again, like our men and women of the armed forces have shown throughout our history, that there are no limits to what our country can do when singularly focused. It was a masterful effort, one that took more than 400,000 men and women behind the scenes, scientists, engineers, technicians, to achieve success, and it was the proverbial launching pad to an era of space exploration only imagined. Intrepid played an important role in the space dialogue as a recovery vessel for Mercury and Gemini missions that preceded Apollo, and now as the stewards of the Enterprise space shuttle, the largest space artifact in the Northeast. We continue to be the center of that dialogue and will fittingly celebrate that wondrous time in history with Apollo 11 programming all throughout the year. We are committed to making this museum a destination, a community, and a hub of learning that bridges the past and the future for all. Without the dedication of our trustees, our co-chairman, the entire Fisher family who saved this great ship from the scrap yards, none of this would have been possible. I am proud to introduce a dedicated Intrepid leader, a longtime vice chairman of the museum. He was chairman of one of Wall Street's premier law firms for almost 20 years. He served for many years on the Defense Business Board of the Department of Defense and on the senior advisory boards for both the United States Southern Command and European Command. He has recently been serving as an advisor for many four-star admirals with respect to their transitions from the military to the private sector upon retirement. He's a recipient of the Exceptional Public Service Medal, among the highest civilian awards of the Secretary of Defense. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Mel Immergut.
Thanks, Susan. Memorial Day is our annual holiday for remembering those who have died while serving their country as members of our armed services. We are truly blessed today to have as our Memorial Day speaker on Intrepid, Admiral Bill Moran, the current Vice Chief of Naval Operations. This summer, Admiral Moran will become the 32nd Chief of Naval Operations, which will make him commander of the entire United States Navy, the most powerful and largest naval force in the history of the world. A few years ago, we began a new tradition at our Memorial Day service, having an important representative of one of our allied naval forces as a guest on Memorial Day. We started 3 years ago with the Minister of Defense of Colombia, who was followed by the head of the Canadian Navy, and then last year from the German Armed Forces, the Deputy Supreme Allied Commander Transformation of NATO. This year, we're privileged to welcome as our distinguished Allied Forces guest, Commodore Andrew Benton, British Naval Attaché to the United States. He works closely in that capacity with our global forces, and it is an honor for us to have such an important member of our crucial NATO allies' excellent military. Welcome, Commodore Benton, and thank you for joining us today. National security concerns obviously preoccupy every citizen of the United States now. Terrorism, aggressive foreign state powers like North Korea and Russia, relations with friendly countries like members of the NATO alliance, budgetary constraints, a host of other issues make our military as important now as it has been in any time in our history. Intrepid is, besides Grant's Tomb, the only major military installation in New York. Memorial Day is our most solemn day, commemorating, as it does, those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in defending our country. It's therefore inspiring to have as our speaker on Memorial Day, with this great ship Intrepid next to us, a leader like Admiral Moran. Admiral Moran is truly extraordinary. He's a native of our own state of New York and a graduate of the United States Naval Academy, followed by a master's degree from the National War College. Admiral Moran is a naval aviator flying the P-3 Orion, which is a surveillance aircraft that he used, among other things, to track Russian submarines. He also served on carrier USS Forrestal, a great successor to Intrepid, and on the staff of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. Ashore, he has served as the CNO's Director of Air Warfare and Chief of Naval Personnel, as well as his current billet as the Vice Chief of Naval Operations. He is, for those of you who don't know this, universally regarded as one of the most imaginative and accomplished officers in our entire military. This Memorial Day is a special one for us on Intrepid. As we approach the 75th anniversary of D-Day, it is very emotional for us as New Yorkers to hold this ceremony next to USS New York. I well remember the cold, crisp November day in 2009 when we gathered on this very pier for the commissioning of the ship. New York, of course, is built in part with steel salvaged from the World Trade Center after the September 11th attacks, actually built with that steel. On her way to her commissioning 10 years ago, she sailed by the World Trade Center for the first time and gave the site a 21-gun salute. How fitting on this Memorial Day that New York is once again back to her home and passed by on her way here the newly rebuilt World Trade Center that she now takes such an important part in protecting. Our Memorial Day ceremony involves remembrance of all of our soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, Coast Guardsmen and women who have given their lives so we may be free. We have had a tradition on Memorial Day of speakers from all branches of the military. Obviously, being on board Intrepid with New York alongside of us, it is particularly powerful to have the next leader of the United States Navy as our speaker this year to lead us in our remembrance. It's with the greatest honor and respect that I present to you the next Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Bill Moran.
Well, thank you, Mel, for a very kind introduction. Probably over the top just a bit, but that's what you get in New York, isn't it? But make no mistake, the honor is all mine to be able to participate today along the banks of the Hudson River with a great active duty ship on one side and this historic museum and warship on the other side. So welcome to everyone here, and good morning. Thanks for joining us. On behalf of the extraordinary men and women of the United States Navy and all who wear the cloth of our nation, thank you for sharing Memorial Day with us today. Special thanks to Susan and the Intrepid Museum, all the organizers and volunteers, and thousands of organizers and volunteers for New York Fleet Week. I tell you what, Mayor, it just doesn't get any better than this for sailors and Marines who are with us today off the New York and other parts of the Navy. So thank you to all of you who have put this show together for the last week. Mayor Deblasio, Commissioner Sutton, and our foreign allies and partners who are here today, thanks for joining us. And finally, and most especially, for all of our veterans and our active duty military, if you're a veteran or active duty, please stand and be recognized on this beautiful day. Well, this week, as I said, has demonstrated once again that New York is a Navy town. And to be able to close out Fleet Week at the site of America's most cherished warships, the USS Intrepid, is indeed very special for me. And as a fellow upstater and New Yorker, I could not be more proud to play just a small role in bringing together this wonderful patriotic city in our great Navy. New York has a special place in all of our hearts. And if you've been lucky enough to wear your whites in Times Square, or march down through Brooklyn in a parade, or be thanked for your service by New York's finest, there is no doubt New York City is the Navy's hometown. The character of this city, with its own brand of fortitude, resiliency, and grit, matches the character of the ship that we're standing next to and the American service members we honor here today on Memorial Day. Today is a solemn occasion as we pause to remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice, those who, as President Lincoln said at Gettysburg, gave their last full measure of devotion. Countless generations, heroes that served as guardians of our freedom and our way of life. We are the beneficiary of their sacrifices, and we celebrate the gift that they bestowed upon us. And we stand on their shoulders, and for those of us on active duty, we stand the watch for them. Our pledge here today and every day is to preserve, uphold, and defend their legacy so that future generations can stand here as we do with the same liberties and freedoms on the shores of this great nation and in the shadow of a great city. For many of those heroes, New York City, with its world-famous skyline, the Statue of Liberty in the background, these were their last sights before they set sail for unfamiliar and dangerous places. Belleau Wood, Normandy, Chosin, Khe Sanh, Fallujah, Kabul. Places where they defended democracy against those who would seek to do us harm. Where they placed the values of America above their own comfort, their own gain, or even their own lives. These extraordinary heroes share the same sense of purpose that beats in the heart of every American and every New Yorker, especially those who were here on 9/11. Firemen, policemen, and everyday but extraordinary citizens of New York who ran towards danger, not from it. Those New Yorkers inspired a nation on that day, and they inspired many of us wearing a uniform. They inspired sailors like Senior Chief Petty Officer Shannon Kent, who gave her last full measure of devotion in Syria earlier this year. Shannon was a New Yorker, and when you hear her story or look at the images of her in tactical gear in a combat zone with her Yankees cap on, you'd be proud to claim her as one of your own. Like so many New Yorkers, Shannon came from a family rich with tradition of selfless service. Her father, a New York State policeman. Her uncle, a New York City firefighter. Both were first responders on 9/11. And her husband, Joe, recently retired from the Army after a long and distinguished career. And her brother, a United States Marine, still on active duty. Like so many New Yorkers, Shannon wanted to make it big. Not just in this city, but in your Navy and in our world. In the true spirit of a New Yorker, she had the grit and determination to be the very best at whatever she did. She joined an elite community in the Navy, deployed to the most dangerous regions in the world, because Shannon was a warrior. She was also a dedicated mother and wife. And while it is important to remember Shannon, it is just as important to remember what she was willing to give her life for. For us, for each other, and for freedom from tyrants, terrorists, and those who seek to replace a free system with an autocratic one. This is the legacy left to us by heroes like Shannon and the sailors who once fought on the decks of Intrepid. That same call to service, that same drive to push the boundaries forward, and that same resolve to make the world a better place. None of us know the challenges of our country and the challenges it will face tomorrow, except for one, and that is challenges will certainly come our way. None of us know the depths of sacrifice ladies and gentlemen, is the sound of freedom. Navy helicopters. None of us know the depths of the sacrifice that this generation and future generations may be called upon to make, but we do know that the fighting spirit of all Americans willing to give their last full measure of devotion remains just as strong with this generation. It lives on in the very heart of every sailor and American called to a life of service. They serve today with a sense of purpose and determination, honoring the spirit of those we memorialize on this day. And I have to believe that the heroic sacrifices of Americans like Shannon Kent is never lost. That the character of women and men who serve today and in the future is inspired by what others have done and represents what's best about the Navy, about New York City, and about this great nation. Please leave here today knowing that it is so important to honor those who gave their lives for this country, because gratitude, publicly and strongly professed, is the great motivator for fearless warriors in our armed services. And because the faith that Americans have in all of us in uniform serves to provide stability throughout the globe. So God bless this great city. God bless this great land we call America, and bless all of those who gave their life in service to their nation. Thank you very much.
Sir, thank you so much for your incredibly meaningful and inspirational and important words for all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to introduce the co-chairman of the Intrepid Museum. He is currently chairman of global brokerage of Cushman & Wakefield, and prior had served as Cushman & Wakefield's president and CEO from 2005 to 2010. He's a passionate champion of the Intrepid Museum, and he cares deeply about the well-being of military personnel and their families. He helped found Cushman & Wakefield's own veterans hiring platform, known as the C&W Veterans Initiative Program, on which he serves as chairman. He's a member of the board of Team Rubicon, the Navy SEAL Foundation, and the Syracuse University Institute for Veterans and Military Families. He also served as chairman of the Business Executives for National Security from 2007 to 11, and currently still serves on its executive board, among countless other civic and charitable organizations. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Bruce Mosler.
Thank you, Susan, for that very kind introduction, and for all that you and the entire Intrepid team do to make this a world-class institution. Admiral Moran, well, go ahead. Admiral Moran, thank you very much for joining us on this most important day to recognize those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service for our freedom. And as Susan said, we appreciate your most important and thoughtful words. Mel, my fellow trustee and great friend, as always, it is great to see you here on this solemn occasion. I also want to take a moment to thank the Board of Trustees, all of them, especially my co-chairman, Ken Fisher, and the entire Fisher family for all that they do for our men and women in uniform. Ladies and gentlemen, we gather here on a solemn occasion, a day that our nation sets aside to remember those who have given their all. We would do well to remember the poignant words of President James A. Garfield at the first commemoration of Memorial Day on May 30th, 1868, when he said, "We do not know one promise these men made, one pledge they gave, one word they spoke, but we do know they summed up and perfected by one supreme act the highest virtues of men and citizens. For love of country they accepted death, and thus resolved all doubts, and made immortal their patriotism and their virtue." It is fitting that we're here at Intrepid to honor their memory, for Intrepid is indeed hallowed ground. Famous for her rich history of service to our country, she carried men and munitions in World War II, Vietnam, and the Cold War. She knew battle, danger, attacks, and certainly loss of life. But she also knew incredible acts of heroism by her crew, and thus ultimate victory. As you've heard, more than 250 of her sailors gave their lives on this ship and in her aircraft. Intrepid, therefore, is symbolic in that she is a constant reminder that freedom is not for free. It comes with a heavy cost and requires great courage and extraordinary sacrifice. So I'm going to do this again. I'd like to ask our Intrepid crew and all those who have and are currently serving in our military to please stand up once more and be recognized. Thank you. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you on behalf of a grateful nation and all of our Intrepid trustees. Ladies and gentlemen, this year is Intrepid's 76th year of service to this great nation. And from that day to now, Intrepid continues to honor our heroes' sacrifice by reminding our youth of the heavy price that the nearly 1% who wear the uniform must pay to maintain our cherished freedoms. 24 hours, 7 days a week, more than 170,000 of our military men and women are forward deployed right now around the world in harm's way and are prepared to lay down their lives in defense of those freedoms. They are the thin line protecting the future that we want for our children from a present that could snatch away what we often, too often, take for granted. I'm going to let that win the day for the moment. We remember on this day that their service has very high costs, for which we as a nation are eternally grateful. So in their honor, I urge you today to please take nothing for granted and pause with me to mark a special moment on behalf of those who keep our country safe. Ladies and gentlemen, because we know our national security carries a cost, we must be vigilant and clear-minded in assessing our standing around the world. We as a country are at a serious inflection point in world affairs. The choices our nation makes at this time will determine the direction that we take and thus the impact on many generations to come. The world requires and wants the leadership of the United States. And leadership is insisting that Iran stop funding terrorism and that it ceases the pursuit of nuclear capability. We should also be clear-minded in knowing that Iran seeks to grow its military initiatives and more broadly, its influence in the region. Leadership is also sending Russia and China a message of strength in the face of territorial aggression in the Ukraine or saber-rattling in the South China Sea and beyond, not to mention Venezuela, where Russia has recently committed to boots on the ground. And Korea? Korea remains the great unknown, so we must remind its leader that denuclearization and total disarmament must be the only path to re-entering the global economic village. And in the final analysis, the world looks to us because we are founded on the proposition of freedom. On this day, here in the city that's home to the Statue of Liberty, where terrorists struck on 9/11, a day that we shall never forget, we must commit to holding firm to our nation's ideals, defending our friends and promoting peace, as well as democratic values. That is the work of our Intrepid Museum. It is our staff and trustees' responsibility to carry out the mission of recognizing and honoring those who are prepared to pay the highest price for our freedoms. They educate, inspire, and pass on to the next generation both the hope and responsibility that has motivated all whom have served on this ship. It is now my privilege to introduce the leader of our great city, Mayor Bill Deblasio. He is no stranger. Go ahead, please. He is no stranger to the cost of service, as his father served in the Army in the Pacific Theater in World War II. The mayor is committed to continuing his life's work of building a stronger city known for opportunities to all, while continuing his ongoing commitment to serving a city that cares deeply about its veterans. One great step in that effort being the appointment of retired Army Brigadier General Lori Sutton as Commissioner of Veterans Affairs. Commissioner, thank you as always for joining us on this most important day. And now, Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the 109th mayor of our great city, Bill Deblasio. Bruce, thank you for all your commitment to all those who serve, to all our veterans, to this extraordinary museum. Thank you. Let's thank Bruce for all he does. Now, Admiral said powerful things, but he said something very provocative too. He said we in New York City are over the top sometimes. So I want to know, this Fleet Week, did we go over the top and make you welcome? Well, we wanted to go over the top for the members of our sea services, and we wanted to show the love and the warmth and the caring of this city for our men and women who serve. And we wanted you to know how much we appreciate you. So I have heard so many wonderful stories of men and women in uniform walking down the streets of our city and being surrounded by a crowd who wanted those selfies, who wanted to invite you into their restaurant, who wanted to give you their advice. New Yorkers like to give advice. Did you notice that? Well, we just want to say thank you to all those who serve us. And Fleet Week is a chance to do that, a chance to pour out our love in a very special way. And a few days ago, I had the honor of touring the USS New York. And I want to say to all the men and women who serve on the New York, they have honored this city. They have honored those who lost their lives on 9/11 and all those who served on 9/11 in the rescue and recovery. If you go through that ship, it is not only a key element of our Navy protecting us, it's also a living memorial to everyone who on that grave day gave their all and gave their lives. Let's just salute everyone from the USS New York and thank them. The Intrepid serves as an extraordinary reminder. The story of this ship, it constantly reminds you when we're fighting for freedom and fighting for what's right, we don't give up. This ship took many hits, but the sailors and the Marines on the Intrepid never, ever gave up. And we honor and thank all of you. And to everyone who has made sure that this museum is here for all of us, to Bruce and to Mel, to Susan, you've done something extraordinary. People from this city, but from all over this country, come to this place to remember and to be recharged in our commitment to our nation. I also want to say on behalf of all New Yorkers that when we created our Department for Veteran Services and we looked for a leader, we not only found a leader, we found someone with, I have to say, superhuman energy. And anyone who has worked with Commissioner Lori Sutton will agree with that statement. Lori, thank you for all you do for our veterans. Admiral Moran, I want to just say, we could tell in the brief remarks you gave that our Navy will be in very, very good hands. Thank you for your leadership. And Commodore Benton, we welcome you, and we welcome and respect the alliance. All of the members of the armed forces of our allied nations who are here, let's salute them, let's thank them for being shoulder to shoulder with us. And finally, on behalf of all New Yorkers, I always say I represent 8.6 million highly opinionated people. But there's something I think New Yorkers can agree on across the board. And I want to thank you, Lieutenant McCain, for what you do for our nation. But Lieutenant, I have to say, we also miss your dad so much. We miss his voice of conscience.
So today is a day to remember, but we have to remember with all our hearts. We'd never want Memorial Day to be something that people just see as a date on the calendar and they just think of it as another holiday. It's great that families get together. It's great that there are barbecues. It's great that people get to go to the beach. But let's remember why this day is here. This day is to remember our fallen. The ones in our own lives, the ones we also never got to know. Because they served for us also. In every war, in every conflict, they served for us. And we have to remember them in our hearts, and we have to remember their families too. Bruce mentioned that my family understood the cost of war, and we had an unusual family. Because during World War II, all of our parents were involved in the war effort. For my wife, her dad served in the Army in Europe. Her mom served at the Springfield, Massachusetts Armory. My mom served in the Office of War Information. My dad served in the Army in the Pacific. In places we now know were not easy places to be, the Aleutian Islands and Kwajalein, Leyte Gulf. And the last place he served, Okinawa, one of the bloodiest battles of all humankind's history. My dad was hit by a grenade his last day on Okinawa. He lost half of one leg. And when he came home, the war came home to our whole family. He was the one suffering the most. He suffered physically because he could never physically be the same again. He struggled with that. But he suffered emotionally as well. In ways we understand now, but in previous generations weren't understood, weren't embraced. But I'll tell you that World War II generation, at least they came home to the acclaim they deserved. At least they came home to a hero's welcome. But for later generations, members of our military came home and did not get the respect they deserve. For those who came back from Vietnam, we all know well, too often they were shunned. They who fought for us, they were shunned. They were not the ones who made the decisions about war and peace. They went to serve their nation. So Memorial Day is a time to think carefully about how we actually show respect for those who have served, for their families, across every generation. Because we are not respecting our veterans if we are not also taking care of them and taking care of their families. We're not showing love and honor for their service if we leave them on their own. We created a Department of Veterans Services for the 210,000 veterans who live here in New York City, and also for their families. And I want to remind everyone, if you're feeling the spirit of this ceremony today, you can do something about it. If you own a business or you work in the public sector, you have anything to do with hiring, you know what you can do to say thank you? You can hire a veteran. That's what you can do to say thank you. You know what you can do that's equally important? You can hire the spouse of a veteran, because that helps that family too. And we are doing that in this city, in our government, but also with our private sector. We're reminding them every day, and we're providing the training to ensure that our veterans and their spouses can have the employment they deserve. And we're saying out loud that we've got a lot more to do. And this is a very, very patriotic and nonpartisan day. This is something that should unite us all, unite every one of us. We've got more to do for our Gold Star families, don't we? We've got more to do to help them. We've got more to do to help our veterans. We should not have a single homeless veteran anywhere. So, when we think about this day, let's be, in our own way, as good as the people we honor. Let's try in some small way to live up to their example. Our lives today are a lot more comfortable than those of our forebearers, and therefore we have much more ability to reach a hand and help those in need. The next time you meet a veteran who's down on their luck, let's make sure we're there for them. Let's make sure we don't leave them behind. The next time you talk to a member of a Gold Star family who's having a rough time, let's make sure we don't forget them. Let's honor those who gave their lives. Let's honor every single man and woman who has served. Let's be there for them and their families, not just one day, but 365 days a year. Thank you. God bless you all.